Hi, and welcome to Hope Chapel of Greenville, a church based upon 4 pillars: preaching the authority of God's Word without apology, lifting high the name of Jesus through worship, believing firmly in the power of prayer, and sharing the good news of Jesus with boldness. We hope that today's message is a point of spiritual growth for your life. And now, here is Pastor Will with today's message.
We are in the final series of a final sermon of a series that I have titled The Triad of a Witness. And we are looking at how Paul was a witness of Jesus Christ. Paul was called by God to be a witness for him. And the first characteristic that we saw, that we mentioned a couple of weeks ago, in fact, the earlier part of December, we looked at courage. And a witness must have courage. If a witness doesn't have courage, he's not going to be able to witness what he has seen and heard. The second thing we looked at on December 14th was humility, and how that a witness is not basically talking about what he thinks. A witness is talking about what he has seen and heard of someone else, and there must be humility that is in his life also. And the third quality that we're going to look at today is truth. These 3 qualities, courage, humility, and truth, are absolutely necessary if you're going to be a testimony of Jesus Christ. Truth is the source, listen carefully, truth is the source of harmony, health, and honor. If you don't have truth in your life, you do not have healthy relationships. Let me say that again. If you do not have truth in your life, if you are not a person of truth, you do not have healthy relationships, whether you're married or not, whether you have children or not. Whatever the case, if you do not have truth, if truth is not a part of your existence, you do not have healthy relationships. Solomon wrote 3,000 years ago, he said this statement, that if a king listens to lies, all of his servants are corrupt. All of his servants are wicked. We have a world, brothers and sisters, that is foisting itself upon lies. We call it spin, and we talk about it straightforwardly on the news, and we see it happening, and people say things to you, and they spin the truth in such a way where they can get away with something. Brothers and sisters, listen carefully to what I'm saying today. Truth needs to have a revival in our nation. Truth needs to have a revival in our hearts. We have to be willing to tell the truth regardless of the consequences that occur. Because when we choose to lie or deceive or tell a white lie, what we try to do is to say, the present circumstances are greater or more important for me to have it go a certain way than to tell the truth. And in that moment, we give up the health of our relationships and of our own lives. There are times when men must stand and speak the truth regardless of the consequences that occur from it. Apart from truth, relationships will crumble. The vision of your life or where you want to go and what you want to do is distorted. And peace is all but forgotten. Truth matters because God is truth. There are 4 aspects that we're going to be looking at this morning that they are addressed in order to have a healthy, a life of health and fruitfulness. And we're going to look at those things, and every single man that has ever lived upon this earth has had to, and they may not, most of them do not think through this, but all 4 of them have to address these things that Paul dealt with, that we're going to look at Paul dealt with at this time in front of a mob. And these 4 things deal with very particular aspects, and they all relate to truth. What a man believes, and you'll see this about Paul, he'll bring these 4 things up. What a man believes about himself, we call that ontology. What a man believes about faith, theology. What does he believe about faith? What is true? What a man believes about the purpose in life or his philosophy of life. And the last thing that Paul will deal with is what does a man believe about man or the audience that he's talking to, or we would call anthropology. Those four things Paul deals with, and we're going to look at this morning. And let me just say here at the very, very beginning, This is something that I want you to get. Christians, write this down in your notes, underline it, circle it, highlight it, memorize it. Christians, you say this will be a simple statement. Well, that's true, but the sad part of it is that it's not always being professed to be true. Christians tell the truth. You say, well, that's a simple statement. That's true. And yet I know individuals in my life who purport to be Christians, and yet their lives are full of lies. Brothers and sisters, let me just say here and pause this, and I want you to get this. If you struggle telling the truth, on a regular basis, grace is not working in your life, and you may not even have grace in your life. Whoa. Heavy statement, right? Christians, believers, individuals who follow Christ are individuals who tell the truth. It's not always fun to tell the truth. All right? Sometimes you tell the truth and you're going to pay for it, all right? But it's always right to tell the truth. Always right. Turn to your neighbor and say, it's always right to tell the truth. All right? It's always right to tell the truth. Always right to tell the truth. And when you and I get into where we're not telling the truth, we are decrying the Christ that we serve. Okay? So here is Paul in this setting, and I want you to get this. Paul is in this setting. He's in a very difficult setting. His life is at stake. He's being hoisted above the crowd because they want to get at him to kill him. And the soldiers come in, these big brawny guys, and pick him up. It's like kind of a rock crowd, and they're picked him up and they're moving him away because they want to. The crowd want to kill him. And he gets down and he starts talking to the commander, and he says, "Can I talk to the people?" And he's amazed that he can speak Greek. In my heart, I said, that's not all he can speak. All right. So he says, "Let me address the crowd." And he says, "Well, I thought you were the Egyptian that just, 4,000. That's really wild out there. Think about it. They led 4,000. Who are you going to kill in the wilderness? 4,000 assassins go out in the wilderness. No, that's not me. Can I address the crowd? Sure." Now here's the moment. Get this. Paul's life is at stake. Paul's life is at stake. What is he going to say? Is at that moment that Paul unleashes. And the thing that you can put at the title of on your Bible in chapter 22, Paul spoke the truth. Paul spoke the truth. Regardless of whether it was going to be his life or not, Paul spoke the truth. And that's what I want to say for you today, because if we are people who do not tell the truth, then we beset everything that we say that we are. The only way a man can retain confidence and empower others and continually live forward in a sea of lies and accusations is to tell the truth. He has to know that there is a God and that this God is spoken and that this God teaches truth. Most people are controlled, listen carefully, most people are controlled by their circumstances. And they're controlled by the people around them. And they will tell the truth or not tell the truth based upon whether the circumstances will be friendly to the truth or not. God calls us to tell the truth regardless of what happens. A wise man lives out his eternal responsibility in his temporal surroundings. So how does Paul respond? And this is something that I want you to see this. You'll see it in verses 37 to 40. He responds with grace, he responds with intelligence, and he responds with kindness. Now, I will tell you at the very end of the message a verse in Ephesians chapter 5 and Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 15, where Paul makes a statement, "Speak the truth in love." Now, brothers and sisters, let me just say this up front. It is never, and this is something I want you to write down, there is no justification at any time for unkindness. Okay? Put that in your note. There is no justification at any time to be unkind. Jesus Christ was never unkind. You see, what we think is that we have the right because we've got the truth and we're going to put it out there, we're going to put it in your face, and it's going to come in a very difficult time. No. Unkindness is never accepted as a Christian. We never have the right to be unkind. There's never a justification. When you tell the truth, you tell the truth in love. This is a man who is controlled, Paul, by a greater power than those that are around him. Growing up in California, I grew up during the I grew up during the times of UCLA dominance in basketball. That is no longer the case. There was a man by the name of John Wooden. Ever heard of John Wooden? For those of us that have the gray hairs, yes. Byron is in the back saying yes. He had a whole system of a pyramid of success, he called it. And what I loved about John Wooden is that he won. As a kid, that's what I loved, but I didn't understand why he was beating everybody. In fact, I was doing some research and reading a book about him, and one of the things about Johnny Wooden, he was a believer, very strong believer, number one, but number two, he taught his players about life more than he taught them about basketball. And the people that had value in their life wanted a coach who would teach them about life. And I was listening to some of his tapes just this last week. But this guy won, this is even hard to even think about. In a 12-year span, he won the national championships 10 times. That's just unheard of. In fact, he's known even now as the greatest coach that has ever lived across all sports. But there was one thing about Johnny Wooden that you learned real quick. Don't ever tell him a lie, because it's over at that point. He was a man of integrity, lived 99 years old, died, I think, just a couple of years ago. But a man of integrity, a man who said, I can live in a world, a sea of deceit. And if you've never seen how coaches act sometimes playing basketball, never heard the name of Bobby Knight? Real controlled guy there. And what happened is that you have there a picture of a person who is controlled by his circumstances and a person who controls his circumstances or is in control of himself in that. And I remember thinking about it. My dad said to me one time as we were watching a basketball game, don't ever forget, son, that this is a man of integrity who is coaching this team. And that's why it matters. Johnny Wooden said one time, you can win on the scoreboard and lose. Or you can lose on the scoreboard in numbers and still win. Because success is not defined by winning. Success is the peace of mind that comes from you having done your best. That's winning. But most of us live our lives not doing that, and we live in a world of deceit. Now, brothers, listen, brothers specifically. God is taking a number of you men into places where you never thought you would be when it comes to your job is concerned. And there's a lot of lucrative stuff coming up. And hey, we'll give you this, and we'll give you this, and we'll up your salary, and we'll do all of this stuff. But there's a price to pay. Men, listen to me. Don't ever sell your soul for what's in your back pocket. Ever. Be a man of truth and integrity. And if it means you get passed over, you get passed over. But when the day is done, you'll live with yourself in peace because you're a man of truth. So we're going to look at what happened with Paul in this very dynamic, destructive situation where he is speaking to a crowd of individuals and can say anything to save his own skin. And what does he do? He deals with those four issues that we're going to look at. The first one is in verses 1 to 5, Paul spoke the truth about himself. Paul spoke the truth about himself. Let's just read verses 1 to 5. Brethren and fathers, hear my defense before you now. But when they heard that he spoke to them in Hebrew, they kept all the more silent. Then he said, I indeed am a Jew, born in Tarshish of Cilicia, but brought up at this city in Jerusalem, where he's at right now, at the feet of Gamaliel, who was the number one teacher at that time, taught according to the strictness of our father's law, and was zealous toward God, as you all are today. Associating himself, telling him, I'm exactly who you are. I was in this place. And then he says amazing things, and I Persecuted this way. Now, that phrase right there, you can circle this way, that means believers. That means Christianity, okay? That's what they used to call it. You know where they got it? When Jesus said in John 14, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No man comes to the Father but by me. That's where they got the word. Christians back in Paul's times they were people of the way. And that way was Jesus, all right? So he says, I persecuted this way to the death, binding and delivering into prisons both men and women. You know what he's just saying? I murdered people. I persecuted people. I destroyed people. This is who's talking to you right now. I destroyed people. As also the high priest bears me witness, and all the council of the elders, from whom I received letters to the brethren, and went to Damascus to bring in chains even those who were there to Jerusalem to be punished. So Paul says in those 5 verses, this is who I am. I am an individual who persecutes people. I'm a person who murders individuals. I'm a person who takes my authority so importantly, it matters so much to me that I'm willing to take people to the death in order to do what I believe is right. That's what he's saying. This is not a lightweight statement here. Now, wait a second. All this crowd is saying, well, wait, you're the one that's saying you're not supposed to do that. Paul says, I persecuted the very same thing that you're persecuting. His defense is, he's going to tell him the truth. He says, first of all, in verse 37 that we looked at, that he was experienced. He was a person of bilingual ability. He was intellect. He had a heritage of a Jewish Pharisee. He was a religious person. He was educated by Gamaliel, the top educator of that time. He was zealous for the law. And by the way, just let me say this. For those of you that are entering college just now, or those of you that are in college, or those of that are you're preparing for a certain vocation in the future, listen carefully to this. A willfully unprepared man is usually a woefully discarded one. You may not have the opportunity to get prepared like you want to in a certain task. You may not have that opportunity, and you can still be used by God. But if you are given that opportunity and you willfully say, I'm not going to put myself, my back to the burden, and I'm not going to prepare myself for what's in front of me, you will find out that lack of preparation will hurt you and harm you in the future. And that Paul did not do that. Paul said that he was not only an individual who was educated, but he's also a persecutor unto death. And he was also verified in verse 5. Those are the things. And let me just ask you to write this in your notes. This phrase, be true to yourself. Be true to yourself. Now, I'm not going to get off on self-help and all that stuff, but that needs to be dead on. Be true to yourself, and add these 2 words, about yourself. I am amazed as a man in the ministry of how many people deceive themselves about themselves, telling themselves that they're better or not as good as they are, lying to themselves. Because we all do that at times. We all talk. Do you ever talk to yourself in your head? I have been caught talking to myself out loud, and that's not always good. But have you ever talked to yourself in your head? You know, you're communing with yourself. You're doing, well, that was really stupid, Will. Why did you do that? Well, I don't know. Because you had and you're talking to yourself and you're mumbling, all right? When you do that, talk truth. Talk truth to yourself. Tell yourself the truth. One of the biggest struggles in counseling is getting people to see the truth because they have deceived themselves. And so again, I say this to you, Christians are individuals who tell the truth, not only to other people, not only to God, but also to their own heart. Be true to yourself. If you're not good at basketball, play soccer. All right? How tall am I? Who said that? I see that. See, lying right there. See, Dan said it and then pointed behind him, all right? See, that's why this message is so important, all right? I am not a tall person. For me to try out for basketball, to be a center of the basketball team is not going to work, isn't it, Byron? No, it's not. No? So the coach comes up to me and says, you're going to play guard. I don't want to play guard. I want to play center. Centers are the 6'7", 6'10", 7'1" type guys. No. I can do that. I said, Coach, you just don't understand. You got to realize I have a 56 vertical jump. Now, if I could jump 56 inches straight up, can I play center? Maybe, all right? I dunk the ball and all of that stuff. But he's looking at me and goes, there's no way it's 56. I'm lying to myself, all right? But if I lie to myself and if I lie to other people, this is what I destroy all the relationships that I have. You cannot, listen to me, you cannot have healthy relationships if you're going to dabble in lies. It's not going to work. Because healthy relationships only survive. They only thrive when there's truth to be told. That has got to be in your heart. Because I want every single one of you to have good relationships. But if you're used to lying to yourself, you will lie to other people also. Paul stood up and said, I'm telling you the truth about who I am. It may get me killed, but I'm going to tell you the truth about who I am. I am one of you, and I persecuted this way. That's what he said. This is straight up. Okay? Are you willing today, this morning, right now, are you an individual who is willing to tell the truth about past mistakes? Listen carefully. This is an important thing for you to get. Past mistakes do not often determine future opportunities. Get that. Past mistakes do not often determine future opportunities unless they are continually repeated. Get that? Past mistakes, you guys have made. Anybody here has not made a mistake? Don't lie. Don't put your hand up, okay? Because we're talking about truth, all right? All of us have made mistakes. All of us have done stupid things. Every single one of us. For our own sake this morning, if you have made a decision in the past that you wish you could change, raise your hand. Okay, now we all feel very, very good because we all put our hands up there. Now, here's the point. Those pasts that the devil wants to come and accuse us and keep beating our heads over and saying, you shouldn't have done it, and we know that, all right? Those things do not often determine future responsibilities, future opportunities, unless you continually repeat them by not acknowledging that you did it. See? And that's what we get into trouble. We don't acknowledge or admit it. Okay, men, I want you to repeat to your neighbor, next person, with 3 words. Okay, this is good practice. This is good, all right? Men, turn to your neighbor, your wife, or your daughter, or whoever, and just say these 3 words. I was wrong. Go ahead. Go ahead. Say it. Practice to me, brother. Very good. Okay, I was wrong. Try it again. Oh boy. Paul, let's okay. Let's do it. Guys, we'll make it easier. All the guys look at me and say I was wrong. So don't ever question my leadership in the future. No. Okay. All I'm saying is this. Those 3 words are very difficult to say. I was wrong. But you know what, men? You need to learn how to say them. Because there are going to be times in your life where you are wrong. And everybody around you knows it. And when you don't admit it, you lose in the end. People are usually pretty much forgiving when you admit it straight up. Hey, I blew it. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Shouldn't have said that. Shouldn't have been that way. Tell the truth about yourself. Second thing we want to move to. Second thing we want to look at. Paul spoke the truth about faith, verses 6 to 10. I love the first 3 words in verse 6. Now it happened. That's a crazy statement. I mean, now it happened. It just happened, all right? When I had young boys and they were home and I would ask what they would do, and there's no telling what my boys would do. No telling when they were young what was going on. They'd come inside. I could see as plain as day. They walked through the front door and they got that look. Like, I did something. I'm not going to tell you about it, but I did something. And they're kind of like. And so you ask the boys, so what you been doing outside? Guess what the answer is? No. You got kids too. Nothing. So I walk outside. we had visitors, and they were friends, and they were there, and they had just bought a new car. You know where I'm going. This is in Hawaii. And this is a delight, and this is wonderful. And so we walk out to the car. The woman starts crying. The friend of mine, Keith, is trying to, he laid back. He's like, okay, it happened. So I look on the hood with rocks. Okay? All right? Who did it? Huh? Sons, did you write on the hood of the car? Really? Jed? Okay. And I think Jeremiah, but they've written on the hood of the car their name, or they're written on. All right. See, my goal at that point, kids are born that way. And as parents, we have to teach them what? Tell the truth. And my goal was to teach them, die before you tell a lie. Always tell the truth. They learn that lesson. They're that way now. They're brutally that way right now. Brutally, all right? But brothers and sisters, when you tell the truth, it sets up a foundation for God to act. That's what you do. And when you tell the lie, who is the father of lies? Yeah, Satan, the devil. He's the father of lies. So children, listen carefully to me. When your dad asks you, where were you, or what happened, or what took, tell him the truth. Tell him the truth. Don't ever get used to telling a lie. Always tell the truth. And Paul here begins. He says these words, now it happened. What does that mean, Paul? Well, I was journeying, he says, verse 6, and I came near Damascus at about noon. Suddenly a great light from heaven shone around me, and I fell to the ground, and I heard a voice saying to me, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? Now, who was Paul persecuting specifically? Christians, right? So what does Jesus say? What's he saying here? He's associating himself with the church. You get that? Please remember that. Why are you persecuting me? And so I said, Paul is speaking here, who are you? What's the next word? Lord. So he doesn't know who he's talking to, but he knows what? Whoever I'm talking to it's God, right? He's the one in charge, all right? Who are you, Lord? And he said, I am Jesus of Nazareth, whom you are persecuting. I just pause there just this moment. In that moment, Paul's whole world went upside down. Because Paul was zealous for the law. And Paul had come to the conclusion that Jesus Christ was a facade. He was a liar. And we're going to murder people. We are going to kill people who believe in him. And he was true to that. He believed that, and he was going to go that direction. And all of a sudden, everything in his whole life, he knows right now, I have been wrong. I am wrong. Jesus Christ is Lord. That's what that verse says. And his whole life, for the rest of his life, and our lives today are different because of that moment and those words. I am Jesus whom you are persecuting. Paul didn't hide away from that. Paul didn't say, well, I kind of messed up a little bit. I thought, I didn't do that bad about Jesus. No, he told it right out there. I murdered people who believed, and all of a sudden I realized I was persecuting Jesus. And Jesus is God. Verse 9. And those who were with me indeed saw the light and were afraid, and they did not hear the voice of him who spoke to me. Let me just say this. I make a little bit of an application here in this point. God is going to have you do things that other people are not going to understand. He's going to put you in a situation where you have to tell the truth. And other people are not going to understand. They're going to agree with it, and they're going to even push you to go to the wrong way. You have got to be a person of truth. And you tell the truth. Because Jesus spoke to me, verse 10, and so I said, what shall I do, Lord? Pause there. Draw a line between who are you, Lord, and that phrase, what shall I do, Lord? Draw a line between those two phrases. Underline them and then draw a line to them, because here's the point. Whenever you acknowledge that Jesus is Lord, the question of control is over. Get that? He didn't say, "Who are you, Lord? I am Jesus," and then say, "Well, okay, what do you want me to do? And I'll see if I want to do it or not." And it doesn't happen that way. Paul says immediately in that situation, "What do you want me to do?" This is a direct statement of the providence of God. Just last Thursday, I was listening. We were having a small group, and Mark was there. And when the time came, we happened to get on his testimony. If you haven't heard of Mark Hayes, some of you are new to the church. This is the guy that played here on the guitar, and he has that little nice white glove that he wears when he plays the guitar now. Where's Mark? Back there. You're going to show us that glove there, brother? This is delightful. Okay. I'm kidding. Mark got his thumbnail cut off. And so thank God that it wasn't more than that. And that was because when I was told, Beth sent me a text and said Mark got his thumb cut off, or got a finger. He said something along that. I was going, oh no. For a musician, got to have your fingers, all right? But it got the neck. And she sends 5 minutes. You want to see a picture of it? So she sends me these 2 gory pictures. I mean, there's a bottle of blood underneath the whole thing, and the thumb is right there, and you can see the bone, and the skin is off, and it's all. I mean, it is just all right out there, And I'm looking at Beth going, or I'm thinking about Beth going, oh, that's really cool. Take another, and Mark's going, like this. Okay. Something like that, right? Okay. But I was listening to his testimony. This is last Thursday again. Mark came to know the Lord out of no desire on his part. He went to church simply to visit his cousin. And when he was at church, it was like a train hit him square in the face. He didn't go to church to get saved. He wasn't seeking after God. It's exactly the same thing here with Paul. Same idea. Let me just apply this quickly. Listen carefully. In every person's life who is a Christian, God will meet you. It may have already happened to some of you. I know it's happened to Mark. But God will meet you. And until that occurs, whether I grew up in a Christian home, I went to church before I was delivered. My mom went to church when she was pregnant. I went to church. Okay? But I still needed to meet God. And just because I'm a Christian home kid doesn't mean I don't need to meet God. And God will meet every single person who seeks after Him. What does it say? You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. And there's the condition. Children, listen to me who grew up in a Christian home. Listen to me. It is your responsibility, not your parents, to seek after God. It is your responsibility. Now it happened. Now it happened. God came and met Paul. And Paul is telling the truth about what took place. And when he makes this statement to these people who cannot stand and think that Jesus Christ is the very fowl of the earth, in verse 8 when he says that Jesus said to me, I am Jesus of Nazareth whom you bring. At that moment he sealed the deal of who he was now. Who are you, Lord, follows. Who are you, Lord, is the foundation for what do you want me to do. And until you truly know who Jesus Christ is, you will not be submissive. Have you ever wondered why certain people submit to God easier than others? Listen carefully. It's not just because they're good people. It's because they've seen who Jesus really is. See, a person who is resisting Christ hasn't really seen who Christ is. You ever seen in the Old Testament when Moses meets God and he says, show me your glory, and God comes down and shows him? What does Moses do? What's the first thing he does? Falls down on his face and starts worshiping God. I was reading this morning about Gideon. And when Gideon meets God, what happens? What does he do? He falls down and he fears for his life. And when Elijah meets God, what happens? Same thing. You'll see it over and over again in the Bible. When a man meets God, when a man truly meets God, the issue of control is over. Why? Because you see who you're dealing with. See, if I'm dealing with a boss who doesn't have much more power than I do, and I'm just as forceful as he is, I can kind of banter back and forth. But if I start meeting this guy who is just the top guy in the CEO, he knows everything. Guess what? Whatever you want, you get. Why? Because he's got power. Can you imagine God, who created? Thinking about that this week. God didn't go, let there be light. Come on. I mean, now, please, let there be light. You know what God said? Let there be light, and it was there. Can you imagine that raw power? Let there be light. Okay, let there be an earth. I can say that all day. Okay, I want an earth right there. Why? I don't have the power to do that. God says it, and it is. And when you meet that God, all questions about control or sovereignty are over. And I hurt for children who grow up in Christian homes where the parents don't really have a life that has met God. I agonize for that. I agonize for that for my own sake. Brothers and sisters, listen carefully. When Paul stood up to speak here, he spoke the truth about his faith. Total surrender. Total surrender. Paul does not present a soft God here. He speaks about truth, about faith. God demands all submission. It is not an agreement. God is not upstairs saying, please, 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 please. God says, this is the way it is. I'm God, you're not. See? The present movie that's out right now, it's called Unbroken. Anybody has seen that? I read the book about it. Haven't seen the movie. It's a story about a man by the name of Louis Zamperini, who was a trouble as a kid, got in all kinds of problems. And so he marshaled his efforts toward running and was very good at running, and probably would have been the first guy to ever break the 4-minute mile. Went to the 1936 Olympics and was there, I think he was at 4 minutes 11 seconds, but he was just a driven person. Was looking forward to the 1940 Olympics, and World War II happened, and he got into a plane crew that was, the plane went down the Pacific, and he survived an incredible 47 days on a raft. 47 days on a raft. Picked up by the Japanese Navy, taken to a POW camp, and became the favorite target of a very wicked man. But he was unbroken. He would not submit to. It just drove the Japanese interrogator crazy over this. But it tells the whole story. But what the movie doesn't go into, from what I understand, because the word has been broken. But this Louis, after years and years of just not submitting, finally met God and absolutely transformed his life. In the latter part of that book, you find he goes to a Billy Graham crusade, comes to know who the Lord is, and his life is different and changed. And a man who was unbroken to other men, like Paul, was broken by the hand of God. Wives, if you struggle with submission, you need to meet God, because your husband is not the issue. It's God in the life. Husbands, if you struggle with loving your wives as Christ loved the church, you need to meet God. Because the moment you see the depravity of your own heart in conjunction with who God is, and that he still loves you, that is the motivation for loving your wife. See? Paul stands up here and says, let me tell you the truth about my relationship. And I love this phrase that Christ simply says, I am Jesus. And I would say to you today, who is Jesus to you? Do you believe that there is a God and that he speaks to you? Do you believe that there is a God, then he speaks to you? Paul did, and it changed and transformed his total life. So it says in verse 10, and so I said, what shall I do, Lord? And the Lord said to me, arise, go to Damascus, and there you'll be told all things which are appointed to you to do. And since I could not see for the glory of that light, being led by the hand of those who were with me, I came to Damascus. The third thing I want to look at today, this morning, is that Paul told the truth about purpose or philosophy of life. What do I mean by that? Well, please know this. You'll never come to know who God is unless, first of all, He humbles you. Because God resists what? God resists the proud. But He gives grace to the... You don't get to know God unless He first humbles you. And so how do you humble yourself? It says in James chapter 4, humble yourself in the sight of God and He will lift you. Get in God's presence. And what will transpire is it will change your view picture. You and I need to have a worldview through the lens of God's glasses, if you will, of His providence. So Paul here gets taken by individuals. This is a humbling situation. I can't believe. You ever been in a situation where your eyes kind of, you couldn't see for a while? I went to get some eye tests taken, and they put these drops in your eyes, and it dilates your eyes, and you got to put on these glasses. You can't see. You just feel really dorky, And as you get older, instead of reading like this, it's this number, and then you're doing this number over here, okay. Your eye, okay. As you get older, that happens, okay. But you feel very, very weak. You can take the biggest football player in the world, biggest guy, 350-pound guy, put something in his eye that hurts, he'll cry like a baby. See? Eyes are very sensitive. Here, Paul can't see. God humbles him. And so what transpires is, verse 12, then a certain Ananias, a devout man according to the law, that was a study in and of itself, having a good testimony with all of the Jews that are there, came to me and said to me, Brother Saul, receive your sight. And for that same hour, I looked up at him. At that same hour, I looked at him. And then he said, the God of our fathers, has chosen you that you should know His will and see the just one and hear the voice of His mouth. For you will be His witness to all men of what you have seen and heard. Those things right there. He basically says this. In fact, hold your finger here in 22 and go real quick back to Acts chapter 9. Because he has some really good news for Paul. Okay? Knocks him off his horse, takes him into Damascus a couple of days. Ananias comes to him, and this is what the Lord said to Ananias in Acts chapter 9 and verse 15. He says, I want you to tell him this. Verse 15, go, for he is a chosen vessel of mine to bear my name before the Gentiles, kings, and the children of Israel. For I will show him how many things he must suffer for my name's sake. That's a really neat commission. Wouldn't you love that? You get saved, all of a sudden God comes to you, Brendan, and says, okay, you're saved, and I got some stuff for you, and I want to show you how much you're going to suffer. Thank you. Love that. That's really, really great. I really enjoy that, all right? Or you get a job with a boss, and the boss tells you, you know what, I'm going to pay you, and you're just going to really suffer so bad, it's going to be really, really bad news. But you'll get a job. You're sitting there going, I don't want that job, okay? And so the Lord said to Paul, you're going to suffer. And what he's doing right now in chapter 20, back to chapter 22, he is suffering right now, getting beat upon. Now, just an application quickly. If you think Christianity comes without suffering, I want you to repeat after me. I am wrong. Yeah, okay. Christianity means suffering. There's never been a Christian that has ever lived that hasn't suffered. I think of some of the stories of the individuals that God has brought to the church and the suffering that they're going. Why? Why the MS stuff? Why? Why the sorrow? Why the pain? God uses suffering to make you more like Jesus. God uses suffering to make you more like Jesus. Roger, you got 3 girls. It's fun being the dad of 3 girls, isn't it? Okay, now's the time to say, yeah, all right, okay, I got 3 girls, okay? But sometimes, as men, it's hard to understand. Any men in here have struggled understanding their daughters or their wife? Put your hand up. Okay. Sometimes it's difficult. Now I'm going to ask you a very personal question. Is there suffering at times? Okay. Paul, is there suffering at times? Tom, suffering at times? See, we're talking about lying today, all right? We're talking about telling the truth. We had a perfect example. I got one over here now, and I got one over here. Don't tell the truth, all right? No, there's suffering. There's pain. You love Julie. And yet there's suffering in the love. I counseled those two 20 years ago. 20? Yeah. 20 years ago, marriage counseling. To choose to love is to choose to suffer. You don't have to suffer if you don't love anybody, except for yourself. To choose to love is the choice to suffer. He absolutely adores his wife, but there's suffering in the relationship because there's two human beings. I love my wife. There's suffering at times with my wife. And she doesn't see that I'm right. No. I say that a lot, that I was wrong bit. I don't want to be alone in that category, so that's why I had guys say that, okay? The point of the matter is this. Telling the truth about who God is in your life, telling the truth about who the Lord is an absolute necessity for a healthy relationship, not just with you and yourself, you and God, but you and other people. And we live in a world of lies. Do you know that television is an absolute lie? Did you know that? You say, what are you talking about? Every show you see is a lie. A movie. The guy who's acting out Louis' life isn't Louis, right? It's a lie, right? You say, well, what are you talking about? It's people pretending. You see what I'm saying? And we start thinking, women will cry at movies. And you're looking at them going, it's a movie. It's a movie. You know? I have at times, okay, but it's really important movie, you know. Gladiator and you know, Band of Brothers, you know, right? Okay. The point of the matter is that in our world, we live in a world where people tell lies all the time, and it is okay if they get away with it. That's what makes it. If you can't get away with your lies, it's wrong. But if you can get away with your lies, it's okay. You don't think that's true? Tell us the presidents haven't taught us that. True? I did not. Liar. Right? So the point that I'm trying to say to you is this. God calls us to tell the truth. And Paul, in this passage of Scripture, told the truth about himself, told the truth about his faith. He told the truth about the philosophy of life, or the people that he's dealing with. Purpose of life. Why are you here? Earl, why are you existing on this earth? Why has God created you for this time period? What's your purpose in life? Right. That's what we're here for. It's going to cause suffering. You're going to go through suffering. But that's the philosophy of life that Paul was saying here. He goes through this. He says, you're going to suffer. You're going to be my witness in verse 15. I got to move on to the last point. Paul says he spoke the truth about people, verses 17 to 21. Now it happened, same phrase. When I returned to Jerusalem, I was praying in the temple. I was in a trance and saw Christ saying to me, make haste, get out of this place quickly, for they will not receive your testimony. Who's he talking about? The very people that he's dealing with. So I said, Lord, they know that in every synagogue I imprisoned and beat those who believed in you. And when the blood of your martyr Stephen was shed, I was there standing, consenting to his death and guarding the clothes of those who were killing him. Let me ask you a question. You think Paul remembered that day? Oh, yeah. Last thing Paul spoke the truth about is people. Do you have the strength of God in you enough to tell the people that are around you the truth? This is in a bad situation. Very few of us will ever go through this, if any of us, where your life is on the line. And Paul told the truth to these people. And the truth was, you have rejected Jesus Christ. That's what he said right there. Because Christ said to them, they won't accept my testimony. They will not receive your testimony. The world, please brothers and sisters, get this. The world does not accept Jesus Christ. Just get that into your head. I have to remind myself on a regular basis. We're a Christian nation. The world doesn't accept Jesus. And the more like Jesus you are, the more they're not going to accept you. Paul spoke the truth about the people that he was talking to, and to the point where you see in that verse, look what it says. Verse 21, and then he said to me, depart, for I will send you far from here to the Gentiles. And look at verse 22. And they listened to him until that word, and they raised their voices and said, crucify the man. He said the word Gentiles, and they went bonkers. Biased, you think? Bigotry a little bit there? Major. But he said the truth. Once you're in Acts. I want you to turn from there to one verse that I mentioned earlier. I want you to see that because it's important. In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 15. And we'll be done. Ephesians 4:15. Okay. Everybody see Ephesians 4:15? Got it? What does it say? But speaking the truth in love. Okay, everybody, eyeballs up here. Repeat after me. I will speak the truth in love. Together? I will speak the truth in love. One more time. I will speak the truth. That's what this is all about. Be people of truth. Be people of truth. Courage, yes. Humility, yes. But people of truth. Don't live a life of deceit and lies. Tell the truth. Let come what may, tell the truth. And do it in love. Let's pray.